defense attorneys here to essentially be able to get a preview before they go to trial?
Oh, it's a huge advantage. They're going to know what these witnesses are going to say. They're going to know what the prosecution's arguments are, what exhibits are going to be admitted, and they're going to be able to prepare their defense and tailor it to that testimony and that evidence. So there's no question that today was a huge win for Donald Trump and the other defendants who were severed from Chesborough and Sidney Powell. I mean, the fact that they get a full, not only preview, but actually watch that testimony probably here live on ABC. I mean, you cannot underestimate how much of an advantage that is.
Olivia, the other big issue right off the bat was the prosecutors saying that they will hand over the names of 30 unindicted co-conspirators in this case, not only to defense attorneys for Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesborough, but for all of these defendants. How significant
Biden is going to go up against now? I mean, specifically looking at addiction, possession. You even mentioned here rarely charged on its own, but it's not a legal defense.
It's not, Kira, and this Department of Justice is going to treat everyone equally. No one's above the law. It doesn't matter if you're a former president or a president's son. But really, I mean, if you're Hunter Biden here, you're sort of thinking, well, why did I blow up this deal? Because, true, addict in possession is rarely charged on his own. I put more than 1,000 people in federal prison, and I never charged any of these: alien in possession, felon in possession, addict in possession. But it's not a legal defense. The example I like to give is, if you're speeding, you might get cited for not having insurance. Not having insurance is rarely something that's going to be ticketed on its own, but it's not a legal defense. No judge will allow Hunter Biden's lawyers to come into court and say, well, the Department of Justice never handles cases like this. It's a crime. It can be charged like this. So when they do have that sweetheart deal, and let's go back into why it was blown up. The defense here wanted it to cover all federal investigations. Well, one, that's not appropriate. At the time, David Weiss was just the U.S. Attorney of Delaware. He can't even promise that, even if the defense wanted it. And second, diversion, which is almost never offered in federal court, is an agreement between the defense and the executive branch, the prosecutors. It's inappropriate for Hunter Biden's lawyers to ask the judge to oversee that agreement. It's a separation of powers issue. So that's why she said, I can't do what you're asking. So now you're stuck with a case where it's going to be very difficult to defend on the merits. Hunter Biden is an admitted drug user. You can try to attack the constitutionality of the statute. But I think, again, this was a big mistake here for Hunter Biden and his team. And the question is, especially if Joe Biden is not reelected next year, does he take the step of pardoning his son, even though he said he wouldn't do so?
Nima, thanks. And thanks to our entire Powerhouse ABC News team for the breaking coverage. A lot more news ahead, including Ginger's President Biden's son, Hunter. And could he actually still face a plea deal?
He can, and his lawyers are going to try to enforce that plea deal that they unwound. They're going to say that it was signed. So the Department of Justice is saying, even though it was signed, you told the judge that we don't see eye to eye. There's no meeting of the minds, and you blew up the deal. They're also going to argue that U.S. probation didn't sign off on it. So I think the Department of Justice has the better argument in the case, but there's definitely some regret here by Hunter Biden's lawyers. So I think they're going to try to go back, get that original plea deal enforced, because now you're looking at 25 years, although we all know that that's the statutory maximum. Hunter Biden is going to get nowhere near that. But I was doing some rough back of the napkin calculations, and still he's going to be looking at more than 1 year under the U.S. federal sentencing guidelines. Now, those guidelines, of course, are advisory, and Hunter Biden's presumed innocent. But if he's convicted, that's what a district judge is going to look to decide what's an appropriate sentence for the president's son.
So, Chris, Republicans, accuse